Gentlemen, I want to welcome all of you to this organizational meeting for the Tiverton STOP, S-T-O-P, Sakonnet Toll Opposition Platform. The press release for this meeting, I think, stated the purpose of STOP rather succinctly. Quote, to prioritize, plan strategy, and become joined with other East Bay communities opposed to the Sakonnet Bridge tolls. And our first priority in tonight's business is going to be to organize our own group. As you know, the governor and other state officials did visit the site of the new bridge on September 24th. I think that the newspaper accounts of that visit give us a good idea at this point of what our state officials are now thinking. Those articles, I think, tell us what we have to do in our own planning and the planning for the next few months. And I'll just read what I think are the relevant portions of those newspaper articles to give you some background. From the Providence Journal, we have the following. The new bridge is next to the old rusted one, which officials say was doomed by lack of maintenance. Governor Chafee said, quote, we don't ever want to do what we just had to do here, replace a bridge because it wasn't maintained. He, DOT officials and journalists walked the new bridge 65 feet above the water. State Transportation Director Michael Lewis indicated joint studies by the Department of Transportation and Turnpike Bridge Authority are now continuing. He specifically denied that the state views this bridge as a quote-unquote cash cow, as some toll opponents have described it, to collect money for other projects. Governor Chafee was non-committal on the toll question, promising, quote, an open public process. From the Newport Daily News, acknowledging that people on both sides of the bridge who are opposed to tolls have, quote, legitimate concerns. Governor Chafee said the state never again should have to replace a bridge because it failed to maintain it. Such is the case with the old Sakonnet River Bridge, which opened to traffic 56 years ago today. But then they quote Michael Lewis with the obvious question, quote, if not tolls, what? This isn't a do-nothing answer. The authority, which is scheduled to take ownership of the new bridge when it is completed, would need, according to authorities, $4.3 million a year to adequately fund its budget and not pile on any more debt, Lewis said. 40,000 vehicles cross the bridge between Tiverton and Portsmouth on Route 24 every single day. The governor added, quote, we have to keep this affordable. 2 public hearings on the proposed tolls are expected to be held in late November and early December, Lewis said. One would be in Tiverton and the other in Portsmouth. And from the Herald News of September 25th, quote, it's very, very expensive to replace a bridge just because you save a few dollars on maintenance, Governor Chafee said. Now we're paying for that unwise decision of cutting maintenance, unquote. Referring to Department of Transportation Director Michael Lewis, we need to take in an additional $4.3 million a year, Lewis said. Then you have to maintain the Sakonnet and Jamestown bridges. Governor Chafee added, there's going to be an open public process, said Governor Chafee, of the revenue and toll options state officials are now studying. I've given you that background because I think that there are some key issues that we get from those articles. One is, by the admissions of our state officials, the old bridge failed because of lack of maintenance. That's what the governor says. The decision not to maintain this bridge admittedly was made in the 1990s by state officials, not town officials in Portsmouth or Little Compton or Tiverton. Governor Chafee admits, quote, there are legitimate concerns about these tolls. And according to Governor Chafee, there are, quote, a lot of fairness issues. The tolls, according to the governor, are just one option. There will be a public process to determine appropriate funding, according to the governor. The state studies are continuing and are now in process. And the issues of tolls and other options are undecided. From the numbers that were given in those interviews and in those articles, we're told that the cost of maintenance would be $4.3 million a year. We're told that 40,000 vehicles a day cross the old Sakonnet River Bridge. And that means about 14 million vehicles per year. That means, if you quickly do the math, that you could actually come up with that $4.3 million of maintenance with nothing more than a 35-cent toll. Not the $4 or less that officials have been talking about for out-of-staters, and not the 83 cents that they've been talking about for in-staters. That's why there's talk about a cash cow. Based on what the governor and the other state officials have told us within the last couple of weeks, the issues I think we have to stress at this point are: 1, fairness; 2, the actual maintenance cost of that new bridge; 3, the options that may be available other than tolls; and 4, making sure that bridge doesn't become a cash cow to cover up other deficits in this state. I think as residents, we also have to address some additional factors. 1, the economic impact on the whole East Bay area. Secondly, the economic impact on our own town, Tiverton. And thirdly, the personal hardship of every one of our residents that depends on a bridge across the Sakonnet River. Now, let me stress that tonight is primarily an organizational meeting for Tiverton Stop. We're not going to try to come up with a lot of answers tonight. We're not going to spend much time addressing the merits of distinct issues. This will, in all respects, be a non-partisan effort. There are no partisan issues that I'm aware of. We have issues of fairness, we have issues of economic reality, but those issues are not Democratic, they're not Republican, they're not independent. I think our assignment tonight in putting together an organization would at least be the following. 1, we have to identify our membership in Tiverton Stop. Even if you're not here physically tonight, you can join us. And for those who are here, we have sign-in sheets, and you can give us your name, the address, the telephone number, email, so that we can include you as part of our group. Secondly, I think that we have to set up some appropriate subcommittees. One person obviously is not going to be able to do all of the work that's involved with this type of organization. And Thirdly, I think we have to appoint a chairperson for a number of different subcommittees and identify the members of those subcommittees. On item number 2, for example, and these are just notes that I jotted down today, but I'd like to suggest at least several different subcommittees, each of which would have a chairperson, each of which would have its own members. And tonight I'm hoping you'll be able to come up with your own suggestions for subcommittees. But I believe, for example, we should have an information subcommittee. Nancy Mello has been doing yeoman-like work in putting information together for us. For example, I think the information that we now have includes determining the number of registered vehicles we have in the impacted area of the East Bay and the number of registered vehicles we have in Rhode Island. Is it important for us to know what the increase in the gasoline tax would be if that was one option for funding new bridges in town and making up for the deficits suffered by the Department of Transportation? How many other bridges do we have in Rhode Island? Nancy has managed to put that information together from the Department of Transportation. And I'm certainly not suggesting that we put tolls on all 800 or so bridges in the state of Rhode Island, but that might wake up a number of legislators in other parts of the state. I've often wondered, since this issue came up, why exactly am I paying to go over the Sakonnet River Bridge, but no one's paying to go over a bridge in East Providence or Barrington or Pawtucket? I think an informational committee would also be able to confirm some of the information we may have already received. For example, we're told that the maintenance cost would be $4.3 million. That might be right. It might be low, it might be high, but we need that information. What's the basis for the estimates for the number of vehicles that are crossing that bridge every day? I don't know. I don't know if we should simply take it on faith. What we do need are all of the studies and documents from the Department of Transportation. Do we need a resolution committee? What resolutions have been passed in other towns and other cities and by business organizations? We should get copies of all of those resolutions. We should identify other municipalities and organizations that might be willing to help and support us with resolutions. For example, the city council in Fall River, or the town council in Westport, or the Fall River New Bedford Chamber of Commerce. Those are organizations that have to be contacted, and we have to identify with each of those organizations a contact person. We have petitions going around. I understand that the signatures now total something in the range of 20 to 25,000. Well, maybe we need a petition subcommittee, someone in charge to distribute and pick up and maintain those petitions, but not only here in Tiverton, but all over Aquidneck Island and into Massachusetts, into Fall River, New Bedford, Westport, and North Dartmouth, and work with other organizations that may have also put out petitions. We want one person responsible for that job, helped with committee members. Also, as I recall, Representative Jay Edwards had made the recommendation that we start a letter writing campaign. Perhaps we should have a letter writing committee. That might include, for example, even putting a draft together of an introduction and an address for the governor to be completed by the typical taxpayer. It might do nothing more than read, quote, "Dear Governor, I want you to know how the proposal for tolls on the new Sakonnet River Bridge will affect me, impact on me, my family, friends, and neighbors here in Tiverton. And then put out your own personal message. I work in Newport. My daughter goes to Salva Regina. My wife does shop in Middletown. We need somebody to assume responsibility for that project. We may also need a liaison committee. That is a committee that would make sure that we're working appropriately with other groups, not to duplicate our efforts, and to make sure that we have one voice on this issue. We may also wish to have a legislative liaison subcommittee. We have to make sure our own representatives and senators are kept informed, but we should also make sure that every representative in the state and every senator in the state knows what our position is and what our principled arguments are in support of those positions. Remember, a senator from Woonsocket really isn't thinking tonight about the Sakonnet River Bridge. Maybe we should remind him of this part of the state. Also, since I think much of this will come down to issues of economic impact and personal hardship, we should consider an economic impact subcommittee. And of course, we do have an economic development committee that I think could contribute to that. And finally, maybe an options committee. You noticed a number of the comments from the governor, Mr. Lewis, and other state officials was to the effect that, well, we do need funding. Suggest to us some other options. I don't know what those options are. I'm not trying to tell you what the options are. But we should at least be informed about the gas tax and the impact it would have on a gas tax. How much? How many vehicles are driving in the East Bay area? How many vehicles are registered in the state of Rhode Island? How much would you have to add to a registration fee to avoid the 4.3 million maintenance impact on the East Bay for the maintenance of that new bridge? And this is really a terrible, bad idea going down this slippery slope. But there really is a reason to know where the other bridges are, identify them, and know in which districts they are. As I said earlier, no one has ever suggested paying to go over bridges in Pawtucket or East Providence. Maybe that's what's needed to wake up some members of the legislature, because this can easily become a slippery slope once we impose a tax, a toll on a commuter bridge like the Sakonnet River Bridge. Tonight, just briefly to let you know what the order will be, I've tried to put together a brief agenda. Rob Coulter will give us a brief statement as to how we got here tonight and introduce some of our friends here in the audience tonight who at an early date have been involved in this issue. And that includes people like Che Laureano. I will, secondly, as part of our agenda, at some point, ask that Che Laureano be appointed the chairperson of Tiverton Stop. I've met with Mrs. Laureano, and I can say she's absolutely the perfect candidate for two reasons. One, she's very informed. She's been working on this issue for some time as a business person in Portsmouth. Secondly, and perhaps more importantly, she's agreed to take on the job. We will then follow that up with some opening it up to an open forum with remarks by anyone who wants to speak, whether against or even for the tolls. but keep in mind that our primary purpose tonight is to put together an organization. We're going to be involved in a long fight, and tonight is probably not the appropriate time to hash out some of the many issues that we're going to be faced with. We'll get to all of those issues. So tonight, what we want to hear is not only some comments on how this organization should be put together, but I'd like to hear your proposals and suggestions for putting these subcommittees together. We would like to hear from volunteers who are willing to head up these subcommittees, and from people who are willing to serve on these subcommittees. Whether you're here or you're listening on television, you can always contact me or Shay Laureano or perhaps Nancy Mello or Jim Gonzalo. We'll make the right connection for you so that you can get onto one of these committees. It would be my suggestion that all subcommittee chairpersons are automatically members of our STOP Executive Committee and can in turn add new subcommittees as needed or new executive committee members as needed. Other than that, we'll try to operate with as few rules as possible. Rob Coulter.
Hello, is this on? Great. Thank you, Jay. Here's the game plan. What I'd like to do is make some introductions, give you a very brief summary of how we've gotten to this point here today, and then introduce Chi Laureano. I think is going to run with the ball from there, and I believe she's going to ask Larry Fitzmaurice from the larger STOP group to come over. So I think the important thing here is you have to resist the feeling that is inevitable that we are not going to be able to stop this thing. We really can succeed at this if we all work together. And as Jay said, this is truly, if there was ever a nonpartisan issue in town, that if we can all work together and we can network together, we really do have a chance at this. And so what I'd like to do is I'd like to very quickly, so people that are here know who else is in this room, I just want to, at least as far as I can tell, identify some of the organizations that are here, because as you can see, there's so much to be done, so that people that are here are going to need to go back to their organizations and see if there's ways that they can contribute. So Senator Felag is in the back in the blue shirt. Thank you for coming. Dennis Canario is going to be our representative in District 71, and much like Chris Sadiano, I really appreciate you coming in early to help us out. You heard Mr. Jay Edwards has a family concern that couldn't be here. Senator Lou DePalma is also our senator, and I think that's all 5 of them. You've heard from Jay. Rob Coulter, also on the town council. Ed Roderick is over here in a green shirt. He's on the council. Joan Chabot's in the back. She's on the council. This is not a council meeting, but I just want you to know who's there. The town administrator is in the gray jacket. He's right in front of me. The budget committee folks are here. Laura Epke, I think I saw in the back, and Joe Souza is over there. The school committee is represented. Sally Black is here, as is Deb Hallish. Barbara Pelletier, who brought us this wonderful banner. She's our representative to the Newport County Visitor and Conventions Bureau. Did I get that right? That's great. Ray, I forgot your name, your last name, I'm sorry. Ray is from the Portsmouth Business Association. Tiverton doesn't have a business association that's town-wide. That's our counterpart in Portsmouth. We're obviously going to need to be working closely together. The town clerk, Nancy Mello, is in the back corner. She's been helping as well. And I always risk I'm going to miss somebody. I think I see Linda Larson and Gloria Christ from Tiverton First, Mike Burke from the Democratic Town Committee, Jeannie Vieg, if you want to raise your hand, is here from the Tiverton Republican Town Committee, and Jim Odell is over there from Tiverton Citizens for Change. And I hope I didn't leave anybody out, but the important message here is that everybody can come together with this network and we really can turn this around. Other key people that you need to know who they are. Joy Gilkison here in the white shirt, and Jim Lightby, who could not be here today, are key leaders of the petitions, which I think is fair to say really started a lot of this off, as well as Donna Cook and Jean Smith. Are you here from Portsmouth? There she is. Jeannie Smith has been over there in Portsmouth doing great things, and we have so many petitions now, I don't even know that we can count them anymore. So I want to thank all of you for bringing your organizations here, as well as the media. Let's not forget that they're here, and we need your help with the media. Aaron Tiernan from Patches in the back with the purple scarf. Marcia Pozesnik is in the back in the black jacket. And Justin Katz from Ocean State Current is here as well. And to our friends in the media, we're going to be counting on you to try to get this message out, because we won't be able to succeed unless we can get this statewide. So how we got to this point, the petitions were a very good start, and that really got the ball rolling. The town council, and we're not going to discuss town council business, has its own action plan, but as I think you can understand from everything Jay just described, there is absolutely no way that any one organization could accomplish everything. And that's why there needs to be a citizens group that can do the amount of coordination, the amount of firepower that we're going to need to do this. So thus the idea of a citizens group. Now, there's really two pieces of this. There's what are we doing here in Tiverton, and then what are we doing across the town lines. And a few of us got together. Larry Fitzmaurice is here and I think is going to speak. And there were a few of us that began the Sakonnet Tolls opposition platform as a way to try to coordinate so that we can all speak in one voice and make strategic decisions, and we're all pulling in the same direction at the same time. There have been many of us that have had meetings. Jay has met with people in Fall River and the government. I was at Senator Whitehouse's office last week, but that is more effective if we all work together off of the same sheet of music, and that's what the goal is here. So I'm going to introduce Chi Laureano in a second, but I did want to say for those of you watching in the video, if you are asking yourself, what can I do to help? What can I do to help? Obviously, signing the petition is a very, very good start. And of course, we're looking for volunteers. We have no shortage of that. But what I would suggest is that if you're at home and if you're here in the room and you're wondering, what can I do to help right now? Take a piece of paper and write down in handwriting how the tolls will impact you, how they will impact your family, how it will impact your business. I think Joy Gilkison has a form that can sort of help steer you in that direction. But that is the thing that we can do, just as we have crossed over 15, maybe 20,000 petition signatures. If we can get 5, 6, 7,000 stories of how the tolls will impact us, it'll help us politically do what we need to do to turn this around. But perhaps just as importantly, in my opinion, our best chance of reversing the tolls is going to be by demonstrating the adverse economic impact. And that is why the Tiverton Economic Development Commission, the government, I think, is meeting tonight but that's on the government side. But on the citizen side, I think our best chance of turning this around is to document the economic impact. And you don't have to be a PhD economist to do that. You can be anybody can just take a piece of paper and write down how you will be impacted. So I want to again thank you for all coming here today. And Chi, I'd like to just turn this over to you. And again, I thank you very much for being such a strong leader here.
Well, I'd like to thank you all for coming tonight, taking the time to come, because we need all of you to help us. Our Tiverton Stop Group will be working along with a much larger organization of STOP members, as both Jay and Rob had mentioned. And at this time, I would like to introduce Mr. Larry Fitzmaurice, who has coordinated the various STOP groups to explain what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Chi. Thank you, Mr. Lambert, as well. I know many of the people in the room here had some experience at Tiverton, but it's a pleasure to be back. Let me give you a very quick understanding of what we tried to do when we organized the overall STOP group. what we did is we tried to form an organization made up of the leadership of organizations, so that we brought into that group the leadership skills, the political skills, the organizational skills that are necessary to make this thing work out. And that was the idea. And there are 10 groups, and I would like to have your indulgence, and I'll read them off. Common Fence Point Improvement Association, the Concerned Island Taxpayers, which is in Middletown, the East Bay Patriots, the Little Compton Taxpayers Association, Ocean State Tea Party in Action, the Portsmouth Business Association, the Portsmouth Concerned Citizens, Rhode Island Statewide Coalition, Tiverton Citizens for Change, and the Tolls Petition Group that is doing the petition here in the East Bay. So what we try to do, of course, is put all the groups together that already know the contacts politically, know these individuals who are representatives and senators, and so we have fast access and certain knowledge of who they are and how they operate and their views. So that sort of thing is necessary. This is a decision which is going to be made in the Assembly. If it's reversed, that's where it's going to be made. And so we're trying to build the skills as quickly as possible, so that we're not trying to learn as we go. And so that was the main idea, not to learn as we go. We had some previous experience with the East Bay Energy Consortium, destined at the time for Tiverton, of course. And we rallied quickly, put our acts together, and were able to, among other people, oppose that thing fairly effectively. Now, lots of you people in this room opposed it as well, so everybody was working together on this thing. One of the things that's important about this particular event is the degree to which it is politically supported across the spectrum. I've never seen anything in my experience here in Rhode Island, which is somewhat limited, but I've been here for about 15 years, that so unified the people in East Bay as this particular issue does. My estimate is it's somewhere between 80 and 90%, and maybe even higher than that. And that is our greatest strength, and all of the people who are in this room demonstrate that strength as well. You people are here because you're interested in this issue. You feel like the state's taking advantage of you, and I assure you it is. And you're looking for a way to try and correct the problem. So that's citizen activism, and that's what we're all about. And that's why we organized as quickly as we did at the upper level. We don't have all the solutions, and we don't have the numbers of people necessary at that group to go out and solve all these problems. Will depend on many people, and especially the people in the room. So there's a number of people from the organization who are here, and I'll read off their names or point out to them. Obviously myself from Portsmouth Concerned Citizens, and Rob Coulter is a member, and Laureano is a member, and Jeannie Smith is a member. And did I miss anybody else? I'm sure I did. Ray Burke is a member from the Business Association in Portsmouth, and I think I've gotten most people. So we're about 15 members, and again, they're leaders from the various organizations that I read off, and hopefully we'll work on the strategic end while you work on the ground game. So I'll answer any questions if there are any. So thank you very much.
Okay, at this point, I would ask that we, by acclamation, appoint Che Laureano as chairperson of the Tiverton Stop Committee. All those in favor? Aye. Che, you are now chairperson of our committee. Now, at this point, I'll open it up almost as a public forum for okay. Did you want to speak first, Che? Maybe that will help with some background. Che, would you like to speak first? Does that make sense? I was going to open this up more or less in the form of a public forum to get your comments. And again, keep in mind that this is an organizational meeting. Primarily what we're looking for is to identify committees, subcommittees, identify people who will take responsibility for those committees, and people who are willing to work on those committees. Do we have anyone who has some remarks? Joe? And I think it would help to speak from the podium, otherwise you won't be picked up.
My name is Joe Souza. I work out in Newport, construction. I live up on the Fall River line. I do a lot of work in businesses around Newport, and I make a point of talking with the owners to let them know that the tolls are coming, and that I notice how many Massachusetts cars I see in their parking lots during the summer. We were talking about getting our federal delegation involved, and I'm trying to get the Massachusetts federal delegation involved as well. But there's two things I need to see from the Massachusetts people. I don't know if this can be accomplished by putting it on a website, but I'd like them to email, write, or call their federal delegation and tell them, let's make this a campaign issue. Let's make it so that they understand that we expect them to get in front of the Federal Highway Administration and stop it at the federal level. That'll force the state to deal with the financial problem. And also, I'd like the people who go to Newport to restaurants to point out that they traveled across that bridge to go in, because Senator Piver-Weed, who is the Senate President, voted in favor of these. And her reason is that they can't afford to fund the Mount Hope and the Newport Bridge, so that the toll would be needed either on the Mount Hope or the Sakonnet to fund that. Another suggestion I had to go along with anything that we put forward is that the Mount Hope Bridge, which was supposed to be turned back over to the state back when Governor Almond took the toll off. Now keep in mind that the Turnpike and Bridge Authority fought to keep that bridge under their authority using Representative Crowley, who was the Finance Committee chairman at the time. So we need to get that bridge turned back over to DOT, or we'll never get Newport to support anything. That's the biggest obstacle I'm running into when I talk to the business people, is they don't want the toll to go up on the Newport Bridge to pay for maintenance on the Mount Hope. So we have a few issues that we have to deal with. Getting the Mount Hope turned back over to the state, and getting Newport business owners to understand that a lot of their business comes out of this end of the Rhode Island and Mass. So those are two things I think we need to perhaps get on a website.
Thank you. Mrs. Pelletier?
Barbara Pelletier. I was just thinking before our political contingent leaves, is there any way that, do we know what percentage of the traffic across Sakonnet River Bridge actually is generated within the 20-mile, let's say 20-mile radius?
I think that's going to be one reason why my first suggestion was we need an information subcommittee.
Right, but
someplace we can go to get exactly that type of information when we need it.
With all the technology, when a parking ticket from Europe follows you over here, can we not have electronic setup that tells us where these people come from?
I'm absolutely sure, but we're going to put it within an organization, and we'll have somebody responsible for. When you have a question like that, Mrs. Pelletier, I want you to know who to call. It won't be me.
Yes, I will try to
but I want you to
But that, I mean, because I sent you a number of suggestions, and one of them being that perhaps the people that are most impacted could actually, with all this electronic filtering, be filtered out from being charged through their transponder that particular fee for crossing. And maybe if Raytheon or whatever can tag into that for their employees or whatever, that might be a possibility.
The governor has never suggested, and no state official has ever suggested, that the mere fact that you're within 20 miles will get you over that bridge for free. They've talked about a lesser fee. They've talked about something less than 83 cents, and they've spoken about something less than $4 if you're from out of state. But I don't believe anybody has suggested you could ever go over free. We start off with that.
Right, well, it was just, I think, in order to have any argument, we could,
Yeah, yeah.
that would be a very good figure to have how many people actually, so if you eliminated that pool of people, how much money would they be left collecting per going over or per
Mrs.
transit?
Collins, you've just placed yourself on the information
Yes, I
subcommittee.
know. Thank you. And that's not quiet.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Yes.
Sue Anderson. I have 3 questions. One is, does anyone know how the Iway Bridge is being maintained?
Part of the gas tax, the normal state, or funding
general.
for.
Because that's a brand-new bridge. So, okay. And then, is anybody from Bristol here? Because Bristol's the one that's going to be really impacted. If we put a toll on there, I sail race, and my skipper keeps his boat in the Kiki. And every Wednesday, I'm over there, and I'm like stuck in traffic. I have to leave here like 40 minutes to get a 20-minute ride because I'm stuck on Metacom all the way up. And if we have a toll here, Bristol's really going to be impacted big time. That's why I was wondering, there should be somebody from Bristol here as part of this group, big time. Because, I mean, I've heard people from Bristol say, oh, well, they're going to like it because the shopkeepers are going to have more business because everyone's going to go through there. And I'm like, who the heck is going to stop? Because everyone's going to be stuck in traffic. Okay, and then my third question was, there should be an environmental impact subcommittee, I believe. Because if people are trying to get around the tolls and go off on side roads that aren't being used as much now, I think environmental impact, that also should be another subcommittee.
I think that's on one of Jay's list.
That, I didn't hear
No,
environmental.
actually, no. I mean, that's the point of this meeting. I didn't think of an
He said
environmental
economic, but I think
subcommittee. Yes.
environmental should also be.
Yeah.
It's on a general list. I definitely agree with you.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Even in Tiverton, if they're thinking of maybe moving it to the state line, then that means people are gonna be going to Tiverton, so it's.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, because when they were gonna put the mall in, I mean, that was like, oh, all the side roads. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yep, just take the podium. Give your name first.
Sure.
Ray Burke from the Portsmouth Business Association. To answer your second question, may I get your first name again? Sue. Last Saturday morning, the Portsmouth Business Association hosted a legislative breakfast at Scampi's Restaurant, and we were very fortunate to have 4 state senators and 2 state representatives attend, as well as Michael Lewis, the Director of Transportation, and a number of other noteworthy folks. Present at that meeting also was Ken Marshall, the President of the Bristol Town Council, and he is very much aligned with the efforts that are going on here and with STOP. In a nutshell, Bristol's not in favor because they feel they don't have the infrastructure to take what the anticipated overload would be as people
Especially when it rains.
potentially make an effort to avoid the tolls should they go up. So Ken Marshall's in touch with the STOP folks, and we shook hands and had a conversation after the formal breakfast, and he's going to support our efforts. We're going to communicate and coordinate with him. So Bristol's on board.
That's good, because especially if it rains, that 114 road is toast.
Larry?
I should also like to say that one of the members of the overall STOP group is from Bristol, that's Marina Peterson. So we have representative on the group.
It's just like big stuff.
On the environmental piece.
Rob, I don't think people, they won't hear you, at least on television.
Quickly on the environmental piece, that's a really good point, because there will have to be an economic impact study, which I spoke of, but there will also have to be an environmental impact study. And what I'm hearing from Senator Whitehouse's office is that the feds will only review the environmental impact study, which I took as bad news. So we are definitely in need of some firepower in the environmental side, especially as we have, scientists and chemists and those of you that can help us challenge some of the environmental pieces. We're going to stop it at the federal level. We're going to have to go to the environmental level.
Dennis? Roger, sorry.
Hi, Roger Bennis. In order to find out what DOT Director Lewis really wanted to do, I went back to an article in the Newport paper on March 27th, where DOT Director Lewis was in Newport. And I took statements that were reported in the paper and essentially read between the lines. It was reported in the paper, tolls from the Pell Bridge and the new Sakonnet Bridge would be dedicated to repairs of all 4 Newport County spans, with about $10 million to $15 million a year reserved for other East Bay Road and Bridge projects, Lewis said. That would ensure local infrastructure projects do not have to compete for finite state resources, he said. Translation: because Newport County bridges and roads would have 2 tolls for their funding source and would receive no state or federal or gas tax funding, Newport County would not have to fight for the limited resources that the DOT receives from the state general fund, and would not have to fight for the funds left from the Rhode Island gas tax that is not transferred to the general fund, and would not have to fight for the limited federal road and bridge funds received from federal sources. In other words, the governor and DOT Director Lewis intend to transfer or take without permission all the normal bridge and road funding that Newport County would normally receive, and transfer or give or reward the Rhode Island legislators who voted for the plan by giving to the remainder of the state the ill-gotten gains that were taken from Newport County. In addition, after the $10 million to $15 million a year reserved for other East Bay Road and Bridge projects, any money left from Newport County tolls could be used to supplement the money for bridges and roads across the state. I see that as just reading between the lines. It's backed up by Mr. Lewis's statements. Farther on in the article, it says, several years ago, then Governor Donald L. Carcieri suggested placing a toll on the new Sakonnet Bridge and using some of that revenue for road projects all over the state. That was politically insensitive, Lewis said. Translation: taking money from Newport County tolls and using it across the state would be much too obviously theft from Newport County. By taking all other bridge and road funding from Newport County and giving it to the remainder of the state, and then using the tolls in Newport County, then the taking of transportation money from Newport County without permission would be a bit less obvious. In conclusion, I believe that the most effective way of fighting the Sakonnet Bridge toll is to fight it based on the unfairness, immorality, and illegality of creating an indirect way of stealing money from Newport County by using Newport County tolls to fund bridges and roads across the entire state of Rhode Island.
Thank you, Roger. Any further comments, questions? At this point, Che Laureano will give us a presentation, which I think will give us an interesting background that we need for our organization. Che?
Okay, our task is to place intensive and unrelenting pressure upon our respective town councils, our representatives, and on the entire legislature to reverse the decision to toll the Sakonnet River Bridge and to reverse the decision to transfer ownership of the Sakonnet River Bridge to the Rhode Island Turnpike and Bridge Association. They have to know that we won't back down. This is serious. We need help. We could use an accountant, engineers, we could use realtors, we could use business owners, we could use our local economic people and the citizens who will volunteer in any way that they can to help us gain more letters, more petitions, and if they have relatives who have associations with political people on the other side of the state who know politicians, come forward, because we're going to need all the help possible. I'd like to introduce Joy Gilkison, because she's going to be coordinating the letter writing campaign, and with the help of the Portsmouth Business Association, we hope an economic impact statement. Thank you.
Hi. First, I want to ask everyone to please make sure that they signed in and gave your email address or phone number. That way we can keep in contact with you if we ever need people to show up at something, or if we need volunteers for something, or if you want to be made aware of what's going on. We're going to be using that list to compile a main email address list, and if you don't have email, we'll give you guys a buzz. So if you can just make sure you sign in, that would be great. The first thing that we want to make sure everybody also does is make sure you sign a petition. Please don't sign it 50 times like some people are doing, but if you can at least sign it once, that would be great. They're in like just about every business in Tiverton, and they're also at the town hall if you haven't seen any. So please, you don't even have to be a resident. We're asking everybody to sign it. Then the next thing is the letter writing campaign. I've put together just, I guess you could call it an outline. It gives you it's kind of helping you write your own letter, or you could just fill it out as well. It just asks questions about how you use the bridge and how it's going to impact you. And the real thing that we need is stories from you guys on how it's going to impact you. We're asking you to write these letters, and if you're going to send it to the senator or to whoever, please give us a copy. Or you could just bring them here. Nancy's put out a nice little box over there for us, and we're going to collect them. We need to compile this data. We want to have some statistics on how often people go over the bridge, how it's going to impact you, how much it's going to impact you. For example, I'm a real estate agent. I'm back and forth over that bridge 6 times a day, maybe. And how am I going to take clients to Portsmouth to show them new homes and tell them they have to pay $8 when they might not even be buying the home? So, details like that, if you could put that in your story, it would be fantastic. And like I said, there's a bunch of samples over there. If we went out, or if you need anything, you can also use the Tiverton Stop's email address, tivertonstop@gmail.com. It'll go straight to Chi and myself. If you have any questions, if you need a copy of this, if you want to know where to sign the toll petition, that's how we'd like it done. What else?
Do we have a list of all our legislators?
Do we have that yet, or is that going to be part of the information gathering? We do. Yes, we do, and if you like, you can give me your email and I will send it over to you. Do you have a phone number or address, and I'll drop it off. So just leave me before you go, okay? And obviously, we're asking everybody to volunteer like everybody's been talking about. On the sign-in sheet, there was a little space. We need everything from soup to nuts. And whether you think that what you have or what you do or what your specialty is important or not, please let us know. I mean, we need things from bus drivers in case at some point we all want to get together and go to the state capitol. We need volunteers. I call myself a field person because I'm out there every single day collecting the petitions, talking to people, talking to businesses. I hear what's going on, but I'm also getting a little tired. So it's myself and about 4 other people that have collected these 25,000 signatures. So anybody who wants to help out, please come on board. Lawyers, like Rob said, scientists, anybody that you might know that can help out, please offer to volunteer. We're also having a fundraiser at some point. We'd like to get out to everybody. The 3 people who are doing petitions are basically making the photocopies for all of this. So we've been, and Jeannie's going to talk about the fundraiser? Yes?
At some point, not this evening.
Not this evening?
Not
Okay.
this evening.
Do we have a date or,
October 26th,
and a place?
Sakonnet Sportsman's Club.
Okay, so October 26th, Sakonnet Sportsman Club, and at some point, we'll get information out to everybody. Gina will fill us in on that. And right now, those are the, front end, first things that if you want to help out, that's what we need you to do. Anybody have any questions?
Is there a website?
We don't have a website yet, but you're going to have to speak on that, Chi.
We're being hooked in with the Don't Toll website for the Portsmouth Business Association, and it's don'ttoll.com, DONTTOLL, don'ttoll.com.
But nothing's up yet, right?
We've got some things up, and we'll be
Oh, okay.
getting more up, and when we start hopefully start the economic impact study, we're going to do it very professionally, so it automatically keeps track of the impact, especially on business people. We would like the letters from the citizens that, can state their impact on themselves, and somehow we get that information.
Yeah, I mean, even if I have to manually put it all in, we don't want to lose you guys now. So at this point, this is just kind of something I typed, but there's going to be something more professional put together, like a little brochure. And if I have to enter all your data into the website, I will, but just if you can get us how it's going to impact you right off the bat, that would be fantastic.
Joy, can you repeat the website into the microphone for me?
Don'ttolls.com?
Don'ttoll.com.
Don'ttoll.com. DONTTOLL.com.
Is there an apostrophe in there?
Put a link on the Tiverton website.
I don't think you can put apostrophe on a web address, can you? I don't think so. Say that again?
Tiverton website.
Tiverton website is interesting, and adding things and taking things off it is, can be a little difficult, but we can talk to Mr. Gonzo. Actually, where is he? Oh, he's gone, okay.
We
to see
might
if-
also talk to our town solicitor on that. Remember, this is not a town council meeting. We're using the town hall, but this is not town council business.
There is the resource page, Jay, there is the resource page.
Yeah, you're right. I'm not ruling it out, Mike is saying, but I don't know the answer to that. I don't want to get into any problems, because we're clearly going to try to make this a citizens group.
If you guys can send that to tivertonstop@gmail.com, I can forward that on, and I'll take a note and make sure I tell them as well, but if you can send those kind of suggestions, if you can send those kind of suggestions, that would be awesome. Can I follow this, Jay?
Sure.
Thank you.
And Nancy, would we have one of those thick black felt pens? Would that help? While Joy's doing that, I'll give you an idea as to how helpful, you can see from the questions already how helpful these subcommittees would be. But just with request, informal request for Nancy, to Nancy Mellon, she was able to obtain, and I think this is information that we would get through an information subcommittee, the number of registered vehicles we have in every community in the East Bay. Tiverton, for example, has 20,577,000 vehicles. I'm not saying how you're going to use that information, but at least you have that information. I had the question, how many bridges do we have, and where are those bridges located? All of them are maintained by the Department of Transportation without tolls, with the exception of the Newport-Jamestown Bridge. And Nancy now has a list identifying every single bridge and the location of every bridge in Rhode Island. And this is something I had heard of that Nancy has obtained, and it's the Rhode Island gas tax revenue per penny of tax chart. I just quote this for whatever it's worth. Now the state is receiving about $4.2 million for each penny of gas. If you can use that, but at least we'll have a source for information, and we'll have people gathering that type of information.
Anybody else have questions? Thank you.
Chi, did you want to make a presentation at this point? I'd
really like to answer any questions that
Okay.
any of you have out there. Some of them we can answer, some of them we can find out for you. And I want to stress that we really need you all, whatever your party preference is, to work on them for us. This is a united effort. Some of you know Senator Piva Weed. Work on her, because we need this help. We need their help. This can be reversed, and we just have to bring it to their attention, the damage that it's going to cause to our community. You know, you talk about Jamestown, the Jamestown people. Well, they had a ferry service before they had the bridge. That bridge is a beautiful suspension bridge. It's over 2.2 miles long. And the bridge toll on that right now, according to their own studies, should be over $5.50. So paying $4 is really a break for them when you consider that's what they need to maintain that bridge. And the Mount Hope Bridge was turned over to the Turnpike and Bridge Authority back in 1964, I believe, and they stopped taking tolls at a time when it was costing them more to collect the tolls than they were getting. So they haven't collected tolls there in 13 years. And I really hate to see that bridge in the hands of the Turnpike and Bridge Association, because what they are basically is property managers. The heads are politically appointed. They don't get any state or federal money. I don't know if you've all noticed the Taj Mahal they built at the end of the bridge over there. Double the size, no expense spared. And I think they doubled the size because they're thinking they're going to fill it up once they start taking over bridges all over the place. This is happening to us, but we want the other side of this state to know that it's going to happen to them. The Hopkinton area found out they were going to be told on one of their roads by reading it in the Providence Journal. One of their representative, Mr. Kennedy, called up the DOT and said, I found last night you guys are going to put tolls on our roads and you didn't even tell us. This is the way they operate in this state. This state is the bottom of the list for everything, okay? It's at the bottom for businesses coming in. It's at the top for unemployment. Their maintenance, if you compare it to maintenance on roads throughout the state, guess where we are? Number 50. I'm sick of it. This is a beautiful state. I'm a realtor here. I work here. I love this state. And I hate to see, when I go to Massachusetts and I look around and say, why do these people get this much money for their homes? And why is there so much business here? They can't smell the ocean like we can. They can't go to a beach on a Sunday afternoon like we can. And yet, nobody wants to come here. And I've got clients that want to get out of here. And it kind of hurts me. And I say we fight. I'm a fighter. And I say we don't give up and we find which way. And if Mr. White House thinks that, well, all they're going to look at is an environmental impact, I think he's wrong, because the feds also want to know about the public input meetings. And I think we should give them a couple of public input meetings, whether it be here, at the State House, or wherever. I think they got to know how we feel. And I'm very passionate about this, as you can tell, and I really would like whoever is out there watching on TV or wherever you are, if you have some talent, if you have some experience, if you can give us some information, anything that can help us to find a way to beat this. That's what we need. We've got to find a way to beat this. We have to be organized. We have to gather together. We have to call 5 friends and ask them to call 5 friends when we need people to show up at places. We need to call our politicians and, just work at this, because once they put a toll there, they've got us forever. And you wouldn't imagine the situations across this country where the people are fighting, they're fighting this, they're collecting $150,000 to fight tolls on their Delaware bridges. I read other areas, they're getting tolls of 30 cents on a highway that's 30 miles long. We got half a mile on that bridge, and they want us to pay for the whole state. They're crazy. That's what I'm saying. They're crazy. And so this has got to stop. Mr. Lewis, I love him, he's a nice guy, he came here, he wasn't at fault for creating the problem, but he's got to help us out of this. It was his idea, I do believe, to do the tolling, and I'm not happy with that. There's a letter up there that was written by Arlene Violet back in January, and she didn't even mention the tolls, but her letter, you can grab a copy of it, says the DOT should be investigated. I agree with her. Grab a letter and read it. There's a lot of issues of things that they've done wrong, and they want other people to pay for it. We've got the governor's budget this year is $8 billion, an increase of 6% over last year. $8 billion for a population of about 1 million. I couldn't even figure that out on my calculator. I don't know how to write 8 billion. I was asking my daughter, how many zeros are there in 8 billion? I think it works out to $8,000 per man, woman, and child. I mean, they got to stop spending and taxing in this town.
Excuse me, I thought we were here about the polls. Seriously, I thought we were here about the polls.
Are you
not
taking
stopping
this
the polls.
personally? I mean, I don't know.
I thought we were here about stopping
I'm
the
sorry.
polls.
Well, I'm here to ask our politicians, whoever they are, Republican, independents, Democrats, whatever. I'm here to ask them to join with us to stop the madness, whichever way they want to do it. And the answer to their problems is not going to be the Sakonnet River Bridge. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Dennis Canario, I'm running for the District 71 seat as your state representative. In just a few months, we'll be convening the session at the General Assembly. And I would just ask that, obviously, I'm totally against the tolls, but what would be very helpful to us, Jay, and maybe one of your committees could help us with this, is that I think we can all agree that, there's going to be no tolls. What we're going to need to do is come up with solutions besides the tolls. In other words, Mr. Fitzmaurice brought up a good point the other day at the Portsmouth Business Association that we could allocate X amount of dollars from the registration fees, license fees that are collected at the registry to help offset the tolls. The money is there, it just needs to be allocated properly. And I think what I would be looking for as your new lawmaker is some suggestions so that we can present it to the governor and say, look, it's not just no tolls, but here's where we can get the money from, okay? I think the worst thing that, to me, the general fund is a nightmare, okay? Because to me, it's just a fund where there's no accountability. And as far as I'm concerned, there's too much money that goes into that fund that is just, it's play money is what it is. And there needs to be more accountability. And I think using the toll issue would be very, very important. That we start allocating money where it should be going. So suggestions to us, especially to me as being a new lawmaker, as to where we could utilize the funds, and that way we could say we'll use the funds from here and we don't have to toll the bridge. So I think that's an important issue that we should work on together as a group. Thank you.
Thank you, and I think that's a good idea. I had identified this as an options committee only because the governor and state officials were referring to other options. But we can call it that even makes more sense, solutions subcommittee. Well, at this point, I think we all know how we become members of our group and stay informed. You have to sign in, make sure we have your name and some way to keep you posted on what the developments are. You've heard from Chief Laureano, and it's obvious we have a very spirited chairperson for our executive committee. Our last order of business, and I'll take any suggestions on how we might do this, is that we really have to begin to identify subcommittees. And perhaps that should be the responsibility of a small ad hoc executive committee. But we would also have to begin identifying chairpersons for those committees and members of those subcommittees. Let me get a sense of where the meeting is going. Is there anybody here who, listening to what we've presented so far, has made a decision as to what subcommittee they'd like to be on? I mean, there's a number of possibilities. Do you have any suggestions for others? Other subcommittees that haven't been mentioned? For example, the Solutions Committee, or the Environmental Impact Subcommittee. Well, I will go through the list and these include notes that I've taken. For example, we've had a suggestion for an Environmental Impact Subcommittee. Does anybody want to assume responsibility? Let me read them all first.
Jay, do you mind if I write them up while you read them?
Yeah, sure. That's a great idea. Michael, write them out on the chart here so we can follow along.
Is anybody here from the EDC?
They're actually meeting right now, so the EDC couldn't be here.
Okay. And this isn't meant to be an exhaustive list. As I suggested, the executive committee at some point may deem it necessary to appoint other committees. But we've heard about the proposal for an environmental impact subcommittee. We've heard a suggestion for a solutions committee. I had mentioned a resolutions committee. That is to simply find out what's happening in other communities as far as resolutions with town councils, city councils, business organizations, and the like. We really, I think at this point, despite the great job that Joy's done, but I'm assuming she needs some help, we might need a petition subcommittee. Joy has also raised, and Rob referred to the idea of a letter writing committee, which I think is excellent, and that had been originally an idea from Representative Jay Edwards. To make sure we're in contact with other groups that are out there, and I don't know if we could even identify all of the groups that might have an interest in this issue at this point, but perhaps we should have a liaison committee to at least meet with the group that Mr. Fitzsimmons has already identified for us, and others. We want to make sure we're not duplicating their effort, but we also want to make sure that we're all speaking here with one voice. I think it's important not only that our own representatives and senators are kept posted of what we're doing and what our progress is, but I'd like to make sure that who's ever representing Westerly and Woonsocket knows what our thinking is. And that's why I've suggested a legislative liaison subcommittee to keep everybody in the General Assembly on notice of what our concerns are. There's also been a reference to an economics impact subcommittee. If I missed any, I'm sorry. Would that be under the suggestion was a realtors subcommittee? Would that be perhaps a broader heading, maybe a business?
Well, I think the local realtors should get involved because we're out there and I've already heard stories of clients not wanting to come and look at houses in Tiverton because of the
good.
cold outside.
Yeah.
And I think our local realtors have to put pressure on our Newport County Board of Realtors to do a call to action for us, not only to the local town councils, it's like, preaching to the choir, but also to get them active and talking to the Newport County Board to get some.
And as I'm thinking about it, more than most, real estate agents would know the impact that this is going to have on the equity, what little equity you might have left in your home. So Mike, why don't we put that down as a possibility?
Maybe a combination of real estate and appraisers group.
/appraisers group, yep.
The less people who
Okay.
Our taxes are gonna be because
Okay.
there's less people paying taxes.
Okay. Now, let me, any other suggestions for subcommittees?
What about a media group, President?
Ah, that, yes, yeah, well, I wonder if we should have something, though, separate from information. Information I see more as gathering. Maybe we have a media subcommittee. That's great. Public relations, okay. Larry, did you have your hand up?
Well, I was just going to suggest communications overall.
Yeah. Okay.
Within the information subcommittee, specialize in having a couple of folks be experts, one on RIDOT and one on Turnpike and Bridge Authority.
Okay. Yeah, I think that would be part of their responsibility. Any other suggestions? Don't forget, we don't want to become Byzantine either. I mean, we can lose control by having too much on administration. I think. Okay. Now, here's what we have to do. We have to, let me get some suggestions on how we do this. Getting people to identify themselves to chair one of these subcommittees and identifying people who want to be members of one of these committees. Anybody have some suggestion as to how we can do that in an orderly way? And we don't have to do it all tonight. We can get some names. It would be nice to get a half a dozen names of people assuming responsibility for one of these subcommittees. But we can add to it. You can talk to friends and neighbors, and hopefully a number of people will respond when they see this on television.
Could you just leave that here?
Okay. That's a great idea. Mrs. Pelletier has suggested we leave what Mike has written down. Start writing this down. Give it some thought if you're not prepared tonight to make a commitment. If you are, you know, Mike, would it be inappropriate for somebody just to walk up, write their name and telephone number right under it? Yep, right on. Tell us if you're interested right now. Roger, you must be on the information subcommittee. Maybe that's...
Tentatively.
Okay. Anybody else that would like to assume responsibility for one or more? You could be a chairperson on one committee. You can be a member of another committee if that's your interest. Joe, what are you signing up for?
Media.
Media. Great, great.
Mouth of the South.
Yes? Yeah, could I make a suggestion? They won't pick you up on television unless you're in front of the microphone. Okay.
I was just wondering where the military base falls into any of these organizations, these committees that you have, because there are a lot of people who are retired military that live in the area and live in Dartmouth,
Mhm.
Fall River, and all around, and they go to the base for their medical and for shopping and for JAG, all their legal information.
I think the VFW's involved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why I think one or more of our subcommittees will have to have an outreach program of some sort to involve Fall River, New Bedford, Westport, North Dartmouth, because really based on the proposals, if you think about it, the more serious impact is going to be on somebody who has the misfortune of living in Fall River, sending a daughter to Salva Regina, working at the Navy base, and his wife shopping in Middletown. They're going to be in far worse shape paying $4 than you will paying 83 cents, if that's what the proposal is. Yeah.
Can I suggest that you, for the resolutions committee?
That I would be, put me on the resolutions subcommittee. Am I the chairman of that? Chair? Okay, I'm on the. Yes, I'm on the resolutions committee. Yeah, yeah, I'll handle Fall River. Okay. Yes, okay, that sounds good.
Am I writing Fall River in there too?
No, I'll know what it means, yeah.
I just.
Okay. Joy, I take it, Joy, you're going to be in charge of the petitions subcommittee and the letter writing subcommittee. You got your name under both of them. The economic impact subcommittee, I think probably, well, we would certainly like to look to members, but I think we'll have to look to our economic development committee, specifically Len Schmidt, to make some suggestions there, and I understand that they're meeting. Do we have anybody under the Solutions Committee? Well, my suggestion is make sure the camera catches that list that Mike put together of the subcommittees. If you're listening on television, if you have an interest in joining or becoming a chairperson, please let us know. There's any number of people here you can contact. Mrs. Laureano. They can send it to the email address. They can contact me. There's a number of us. Again, yes. You'll come to Fall River? Okay, that's good. Well, okay, great. Well, I've got an invite to speak before the City Council in Fall River, so you may be joining me. Okay, so put Mrs. Black under that group, whatever the group was.
Jay, should we have a separate legal committee? I'm wondering how legal it is when the state gets federal funds and has federal matching funds, when Newport County will be ostracized from the receipt of any Rhode Island transportation funds.
Well, without getting tied down with a lot of rules, I think the position we've taken is that once we have members of the executive committee under Mrs. Laureano as chairperson, they can decide on whether they need additional members and whether they need additional subcommittees. They'll be making that decision. Is there anybody else tonight who wants to pick a group, a subcommittee? Ed is on the legislative committee.
We have 3 for that, by the way.
I'm sorry?
We have 3 for that, by the way.
Okay, that's great, that's great.
And, can I just make an observation? I think it was very strange that the governor came to walk the bridge and did not invite anybody from Tiverton or Portsmouth.
You noticed that slight.
Yes, isn't that strange?
No,
We don't want told.
I think that was a security decision. He was afraid of being caught.
He also came on a rip to bus.
Okay. Anybody else able to sign up tonight for what? Some of these committees will not involve a tremendous amount of time, really, and some of these committees will really, I suspect, be interesting. For example, the Resolutions Committee. I think that's simply a question of maybe working with Mrs. Mello, because, yeah, oh, you have your name, because I don't know whether or not other towns, I'd like to find out what other towns are thinking. And some people have alluded to the fact that we might not all have the same agenda. I would think that Portsmouth, Little Compton, and Tiverton, I think we're thinking alike. I'm not so sure there aren't shades of different agendas in perhaps, Larry's shaking his head. I've spoken to some of those people. There are some other agendas out there. But we should at least find out what the resolutions are that have been passed in other communities. If anybody wants to help with petitions, for example, if you just happen to be from New Bedford or Dartmouth or Westport, maybe you can help Joy get some of these petitions distributed out in some of the local businesses. They're going to be impacted by this. Okay. Okay. I promised everybody that this would not be a long meeting. Does anybody have anything else that they would like to comment about? Anything else that they have to say at this point? Roger,
I have a comment on.
you're going to have to take the podium or they won't hear you.
No, I just had a minor comment on Jamestown. I read in the paper that Jamestown decided not to vote in opposition to the toll because they were afraid that if there isn't a toll there, that the toll on the Newport Bridge would be increased, and that would affect them negatively.
Yeah. Okay. 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 Do we have any further business at this point? We don't need a formal motion, so at this point, please make sure you're signed in and really give some consideration to joining one of these subcommittees. We need some help, and we need at least one or two people on every one of the subcommittees. Thank you again for joining us.
Thanks, Jay.
Good.